You're listening to the Dillo's Dojo podcast, hosted by Dylan Dillo Smith, Midwestern Ontario one and only MMA podcast, where we interview MMA fighters and voice actors like Sergeant Frank Woods.
What is up, guys? It is Dillo, and welcome to another episode of the Dillo's Dojo podcast. This is episode 13, I believe we're on now. This is a big one. Just because of the event that I'm going to be talking about today, I'm pretty sure I'm going to be dedicating this whole episode to probably UFC 254. If you guys don't know, it was a huge event that just happened last night or yesterday, considering the time. The time was like 2 p.m. when the main card finally came on. Prelims started at 11, but this was one of those events where even as a casual, if you were watching the main card, you did not want to miss the prelims. It was amazing. These prelims, even though there wasn't really many big names on the prelims, you know, people like Stefan Struve were on there, Sam Alvey, Cowboy Oliveira, Nathaniel Wood were on there. But other than that, there was some very how do I say it? Some very exciting fights, to say the least. Incredible fights by everyone all around. And that's why I wanted to talk about the prelims, because usually I talk about the main card and I'll talk about a couple things that happened in the prelims, but pretty much every single prelim fight was not boring whatsoever. Every single one delivered. It's one of those events, very rarely you get those events where even the prelims, every single fight in the prelims delivered. It was either when it was a fight, it would end up as a decision, and it would be a hard-fought decision with a high pace and a back-and-forth fight the whole time. Or if it was a finish, it was always a high-paced finish with like some incredible technique or just, you know, some explosive knockout or something. So this card definitely delivered in the best way possible. But to start things off, we had in the early prelims here, we had Joel Alvarez versus Alexander Yakovlev, and Alvarez actually missed weight. So, you know, kind of shitty for him. He has to give away his 20%. But this fight was actually really fun just to start off. Yakovlev was doing a very incredible job on the feet, and so was Alvarez, to be honest. But Yakovlev was getting most of the striking exchanges. He went for a takedown, I believe, which caused Joel Alvarez to lock in an armbar, and Alexander Yakovlev actually fought the armbar pretty well for a little bit until he tried to kind of stand up, and as he was standing up, he started to kind of tip back, and that is a big no-no when you're in an armbar. You want to go towards the person that's trying to stretch the armbar out. You want to fight the hands and not, you know, you're not wanting to let the elbow get extended. This guy did a big no-no and leaned back away from the person who was ripping the armbar, which allowed Alvarez to extend, and just kind of gave Alvarez the armbar on a silver platter. So that was a good start to the night. But then we had a women's flyweight bout between Invicta FC fighter Miranda Maverick versus Georgian fighter Liana Jojua. And everybody thought Liana Jojua was going to win, but Miranda Maverick is a always game fighter, always ready to go down, ready to throw down. And we thought that this was going to be a ground fight the whole time. We were wrong. These two stood the entire time. Now, it only lasted one round, but the funny thing was it lasted one whole round before the fight was finished. And I'll explain in a bit, but these two were just going back and forth, but it was very clear that Miranda Maverick was getting the best of the striking exchanges. And when they'd get close into clinch exchanges, Miranda Maverick was hitting her with some nice shots in the clinch, some nice elbows. At one point, actually hit Liana in the nose with a slicing elbow that like split open Liana's nose right at the bridge. And it was bad. It just kept pouring blood. It looked like the nose was going to be off of her face. So after the first round ended, because of the amount of blood that was like pouring from it and where it was and just the type of cut and how deep it was, the doctor came in and put an end to the fight. Personally, it's a good stoppage, but in my opinion, I'm glad that doctor wasn't there for Robbie Lawler versus Rory McDonald too, because had that been the case, that fight wouldn't have reached the fifth round at all. After the fourth round, maybe even the third round, the ref would have probably stopped it due to a cut. But yeah, Miranda Maverick hit her with this slicing elbow that just cut a wound so deep into her nose that the doc had to end the fight. And it was a good debut from Miranda Maverick. Put a lot of doubters on the side there, and showed that she definitely deserves to be in this division. My God, she was violent incarnate. I expected her to go to the ground. Nah, she wanted to stand, and she showed that she can stand. So I was really excited to see her fight and really happy to see that finish, although I was a little upset with it being a doctor stoppage and the way it stopped, but nonetheless, it was still a good fight. They both brought it, and Miranda Maverick showed that she belongs in this promotion. So it was really exciting to see. And then in the next prelims, after those were the early prelims. That was the prelims that you'd watch on Fight Pass before the next prelims air on ESPN. This started off with a bout between Sam Alvey and Jung Da-un, a Korean fighter. And Sam Alvey is a veteran in this sport. He's been in the UFC for a long while now. Like I said, casual fans are probably not going to know him, but even somewhat hardcore fans, or even, a little less hardcore fans, are going to know who Sam Alvey is. Like I said, he's a veteran in the sport. He's a veteran in the promotion. He's just well known for his creepy ass smile every time he goes into the octagon. So this was an exciting fight going into this because it's Sam Alvey. Sam Alvey never disappoints with his fights. He's always exciting. And Jung Da-un coming into this was on a nice unbeaten streak in the UFC. And coming into this, we were expecting him to beat Sam Alvey handily. That wasn't what we got. It was a back and forth all around fight. Both guys just stood for pretty much the majority of the fight. Maybe, I believe there was maybe a couple minutes of ground game because Jung forced it after a while because his corner called for it. But literally the vast majority of the fight was on the feet, both guys hitting each other with heavy shots. Jung hitting or hurting Sam hitting or hurting Jung with some powerful shots. It was just an all-around back and forth fight, and it was really fun to watch. It was a great way to kick off the ESPN prelims, honestly. And the decision, when it was read out, surprised many people, but when I looked on Twitter, it surprised everyone, but it wasn't controversial whatsoever. Nobody was really mad with the decision. It ended up being a split draw for both guys. Neither guy won. They both got a draw on their record now. Their first ever draws on each record. It was a really hard fought fight. Got everybody on their feet and hyped for the next fight, which is Shavkat Rakhmonov, which is he's a very nice Kazakhstan fighter, and he was up against Cowboy Oliveira, which he's known as the fight machine. He's also a veteran in the UFC. A lot of people love him. He's the only other guy known as Cowboy in the promotion, and just like the other Cowboy, he's a performance bonus machine. Always puts on good fights, never disappoints. And this fight definitely did not disappoint. Alex Oliveira looked incredibly good on the feet, and so did Rakhmonov. Both guys were just kind of giving each other the business. But then Rakhmonov threw in a takedown, and it was so clear. Even though Oliveira is really good off his back, he's really good with submissions. Rakhmonov just was so dominant on the top. And after a while of just constant ground and pound and scrambling, he locked in an armbar, which ended up making Oliveira tap. And I was a little disappointed with Rakhmonov's post-fight interview because I didn't hear any Borat references. But from what I heard, the Kazakhs don't like Borat. So that's fun to know. But yeah, very nice. Great success for Rakhmonov. But that brings us into the next fight, the co-main event of the prelims, which was, wow. It was supposed to be, I believe, a bantamweight fight, maybe a featherweight fight between these two, but it was a catchweight fight of 140 pounds between Cage Warriors veteran and superstar Nathaniel Wood and Casey Kenny, who just had an amazing show out earlier this October on Fight Island. So a lot of people thought that Nathaniel Wood was going to win this fight. And, we were all surprised with the decision at the end, but I'll get into the fight because there's a lot to talk about in this fight. The fight went great. both guys brought it from the beginning to the end. So we'll start with the first round. The first round, it was mostly just both guys were kind of trying to control the octagon, but it was mostly Gaethje Kenny on the back foot. He was hitting Nathaniel Wood with some nice counter strikes, but the story of the round, even though Gaethje Kenny was landing more boxing, it was Nathaniel Wood's leg kicks. Nathaniel Wood had like 20-something leg kicks or close to 20-something leg kicks at the end of the very first round. He just kept hitting these leg kicks, and I've talked about this on the podcast before. Leg kicks are becoming a serious thing in MMA, and the reason for it is because it's very good to use to immobilize your opponent. A lot of people, they bounce around, and that's how their dynamic striking is used because that's their sort of footwork. Some people plant their feet to throw heavy shots, and if you take away that power foot that they can still plant, but there's not going to be nearly enough power on it, you can do a lot to that. There's just a lot of things you could do with a leg kick. It's really good to wear someone down near the end of the fight, and Nathaniel Wood did an incredible job doing that, even though Gaethje Kenny kept hitting him with some hard shots. I think he even had Nathaniel Wood hurt at one point at the end of the first round, but after that first round, I personally had it 10-9 Nathaniel Wood because for the most part, even though Kenny was hitting some good shots, it was Nathaniel Wood getting Kenny on the back foot, and he pretty much nearly outstruck Gaethje Kenny with just leg kicks alone. So as you guys, if a lot of you casuals didn't know, people who are, listening to this for the first time and trying to get into MMA, the way they score the MMA is it goes in the order of effective striking, effective grappling, octagon control, I think, all in that manner, all in that order. So effective striking, effective grappling, and then octagon control. And obviously there wasn't really much grappling in round one, so Nathaniel Wood was kind of doing what he had to do on the stand-up. Like I said, the first thing to get marked is effective striking, and he did really good on the feet. Despite not landing many headshots, he did an incredible job just chopping Kenny down with those leg kicks. And even though he was just landing mostly leg kicks, he kept Kenny on the back foot, and that counts for octagon control because the whole point of controlling the octagon is you want to keep the center. You want to keep the center of the octagon and push your opponent away from the octagon. The more octagon center control you have, the better it looks on the cards. So Nathaniel Wood did an incredible job doing that, going into the first, or, ending the first round, not going into the first round. Going into the second round, it was a completely different story. Both guys came out very energetic. Obviously, Gaethje Kenny just kind of looking a little bit more drained compared to Nathaniel Wood because Nathaniel Wood was still bouncing around, landing leg kicks. But this time it was back and forth with octagon control, and Gaethje Kenny was landing some great boxing this time, not letting Nathaniel Wood outstrike him this time. But Nathaniel Wood still landed his leg kicks like they were nothing. I don't think throughout that entire fight I saw Gaethje Kenny I don't think I saw him check a single leg kick throughout that entire fight. He just kept eating leg kicks from Nathaniel Wood. Nathaniel Wood started using his boxing, though, and started hitting some nice shots on Gaethje Kenny. And at one point, I believe he had Gaethje Kenny hurt. But Gaethje Kenny, being the type of guy he is, he's got a fucking chin on him. And he showed that last night, yesterday, I guess, because of the time. I have to keep remembering that yesterday was 2 p.m. instead of fucking 10 p.m. like the main cards usually are. Gaethje Kenny had a chin on him and showed that he had a chin on him. That was pretty much the story of the second round, though, was just Nathaniel Wood kind of fighting for the control of the octagon that time, but still landing some nice strikes on Kenny while Kenny was just eating them and trying to close the distance. Going into the third round, we thought I don't know where the decision came from, and I'll get into it in a bit, but a lot of us thought it was either 1-1 Nathaniel, it was 1-1 going into the third, or 2-0 Nathaniel Wood. We thought Nathaniel Wood was doing a good job. Obviously, a lot of people saw it 1-1, so whatever. It was tied going into the third round. Both guys needed to either coast to a decision enough where the judges put it in their favor, or one of these guys needs to put a stamp on it and end it. And both guys came out feeling like that. But the one thing that we all noticed was that Gaethje Kenny was looking exhausted at that point. The leg kicks really started to add up. Him just throwing power shots on those wobbly legs now started to add up. And next thing you know, Nathaniel Wood's somewhat outstriking him until Casey Kenny starts using his grappling. But Nathaniel Wood's doing a very good job at scrambling, and even though he gets taken down once in a while, he gets right back up to his feet fast. And he did a very good job just defending the whole round, landing some good strikes on Casey Kenny, and just picking him off mostly. And that was the story of the whole third round, pretty much. It was more closer than I am explaining. But I thought that Nathaniel Wood did just enough to edge the fight out, and a lot of people thought that going to the decision. So the fight ends because it goes all 3 rounds. So it goes all 3 rounds, and the decision comes in. The judges read off the decision, and I just, even though I gotta give it to Nathaniel Wood, he did not look mad at all. He did not look surprised. He was just like, fuck, I lost. The decision went, I believe, 29-28 to Casey Kenny, which a lot of people didn't agree with. A lot of people were like, I want to meet the judge who scored, like, I think it was round 2 for Casey Kenny, and kick him in the nuts or something like that. I saw so many tweets of that yesterday when the decision was read out. And I was really surprised with the decision. I was like, no way Casey Kenny won that. I watched the fucking fight. Like, we all watched the same fight too, right? Like, Nathaniel Wood did just enough to win that close decision. Like, Casey Kenny just kind of ate shots the whole time. Like, that was pretty much the story of the fight. Casey Kenny started to kind of, throw in some control here and there near the end of the fight, but the whole story of the fight was Nathaniel Wood controlling most of the octagon and landing leg kicks. And I don't think what Casey Kenny did warranted a decision win. He ate a lot of shots. He ate way too many shots, absorbed them all, didn't control nearly as much of the octagon as Nathaniel Wood did, and there was barely any effective grappling at all in that fight. And like I said, you score effective striking, effective grappling, and octagon control all in that order, right? So I don't know, man. I don't know what the refs were smoking last night either, and I'll get into that in a bit. But the judges were just kind of on something else, and I'm so glad that not many of the fights ended up going to a decision throughout the card, because it's probably the reason why this first half is going to be a little bit shorter, because the prelims, there was a lot of finishes, and yeah, there just really wasn't much to talk about other than how exciting the fights were, whether they were decisions or whether they were finishes. Every single fight delivered in an action-packed way. There would be a high-pace, amazing action-packed finish, or the fight would be a back-and-forth war between two guys, or just a constant striking affair where both guys are showing their heart, whether one guy's getting the shit kicked out of them and the other one's not, and they're just getting tired because the other one's eating them. Like, this card delivered, the prelims delivered, and before I get into the final fight of the prelims, the prelim headliner, I just want to say you missed out. Anybody who decided, I'm home all day, I'm doing stuff, but I'm going to miss the prelims because, the real fights don't start till 2 p.m. You missed out. I personally think you missed out. You missed out on a great, great showcase by everyone. And the prelims definitely delivered for the names on them. And there was a reason why this card was the biggest on paper of the year. I mean, considering the year's pay-per-views haven't been all too great considering what Dana White's been able to put on. Let's be real here, but it's a pandemic, so that doesn't mean much. But nonetheless, even though the names didn't look too exciting on paper, if you watch the prelims, you got to understand what it means to be an MMA fan. You got to see the techniques that all the fighters had, how back and forth it was, how exciting each fight was. It wasn't one of those prelims where most of the fights were just on the ground humping affairs. They'd all start on the feet. They would stay on the feet. Grappling would only become a thing whenever somebody's striking would be too much for the other. And even on the ground, it was incredible, fast-paced scrambles out the butthole, submissions. It was just a fun prelims to just watch and go through. And I'm so glad that Fight Pass allows us to watch the prelims the next day afterwards, because after this recording, I might actually go back and watch the prelims. There were some fights that I actually enjoyed watching. For example, the Nathaniel Wood versus Casey Kenny fight. Even though I didn't agree with the decision there, it was a really fun fight to watch. The other fight I want to watch is the Jung Do-eun versus Sam Alvey fight, because, again, even though the decision was retarded, it was a draw. It was a fun fight. It was really back and forth, exciting to watch throughout all 15 minutes. I'm going to definitely go back and watch those prelims because even the finishes were fun to watch. So anyway, getting into our headliner now, because I've been ranting about how great the prelims have been, and I need to get this done and over with. I'm only at 20 minutes. I usually go to 30 minutes on the first half, but it might be a little bit shorter because of just how I've been blasting through these. But my God, the headliner prelim was a heavyweight fight between the skyscraper, the 6'11" and a half foot tall, pretty much rounded up to 7 feet tall Stefan Struve up against, I believe, Tai Tuivasa is like 6'3", like very small, maybe 6'5", just very small compared to Stefan Struve. And oh my God, this fight was fun. It was awesome. Stefan Struve did a good job using his distance. He kept Tai Tuivasa at bay. But Tai Tuivasa knew that he was the shorter guy throughout this, so clearly he had a game plan from the start to close the distance, and he did. He would fake takedowns, make Stefan Struve think about it, close the distance very quickly, and then get into the clinch where Stefan Struve could only use a little bit of his reach, right? Well, there's Tai Tuivasa using all of his reach and just keeping close. And man, the story of the fight for Tai Tuivasa was that in close, like in the pocket uppercut that just came out of nowhere, and it landed a couple times against Stefan Struve. Even Stefan Struve tried to throw some uppercuts, but it was Tai Tuivasa who was very successful. And that was just the story of the entire fight. Now, mind you, it lasted 1 round. The finish ended at the very last second of the first round, but that was the story of the entire round, was Stefan Struve doing a great job hitting Tai Tuivasa with some nice kicks, nice punches, keeping his distance. But when Tai Tuivasa closes the distance, not even to a clinch, but just close enough, this uppercut that comes straight from the side of the body, like he doesn't even have his hands up. He's keeping his hands down, tucked to his sides. Just the uppercut comes out of nowhere and lands and hits Stefan Struve every time. And it was just, every time you saw this thing land, you knew that at some point that thing is going to drop Stefan Struve. So here they are against the cage. It's near the end of the round, and Stefan Struve's trying to get away from Tai Tuivasa. Tai Tuivasa gets out of the clinch, lands the uppercut, and it drops Stefan Struve. Stefan Struve tries to get back to his feet, and Tai Tuivasa does not let up, just hits him with a couple more shots. Stefan Struve drops flat, and that was it, man. Like the ref knew when he saw Stefan Struve drop that second time. He jumped in before any other shots could be thrown, and that was the end of the fight. Stefan Struve's definitely a guy I want to get on the podcast. He's a veteran in the sport. He's been in the UFC since like 2012, 2013, maybe even before that. He's got wins over people like the current heavyweight champion Stipe Miocic. Obviously, that was early in his career, but you know he still has a win over Stipe Miocic. He's just an absolute veteran in the sport, and it's definitely a mind I'd love to talk to. So definitely gonna try to get him on the podcast. But nonetheless, great job by Tai Tuivasa. He played a very smart fight considering the problems he was being thrusted upon with. How he's the smaller guy. Stefan Struve had the incredible reach that he had, that type of shit. So like I said, amazing show out by Tai Tuivasa. He's back in the contendership, hopefully. I can't wait to see who he goes up against next. Maybe put him up against Curtis Blades or something along those lines. Tai Tuivasa was doing very good with his defensive grappling too, because I guess he's recently he went to AKA, which is Daniel Cormier's gym, and started learning wrestling off of Daniel Cormier. So I'm excited to see how Tai Tuivasa ends up. Because he's been very good in the UFC despite suffering a couple losses, and he's just getting better and better every time he steps into the cage, especially with him working on his grappling now. So I'm excited to see where Tai Tuivasa ends up next, what's going to be next for him. Same with Stefan Struve. Stefan Struve's still in the top 15, top 10, so I would like to see Stefan Struve up against somebody soon. Obviously nobody that can put his head off of his body in like 1 second, but I want to see Stefan Struve back in the cage. But that was despite it being a short fight, that was a fun fight for a heavyweight fight. Most heavyweight fights, it starts off with flurries and then they're hugging each other. But the whole time it was close clinching with nonstop striking. Every strike that actually landed, you could see it ending the fight at some point, or it potentially could. It was just a fun fight. Great headliner for the prelims for anyone who was watching live on TV. Great ending to it, especially with the very last second KO of Tai Tuivasa, and then just Tai Tuivasa jumping up on the cage and accidentally hitting Stefan Struve with his foot. He didn't even hit Stefan Struve hard with his heel. But the funny thing was Stefan Struve like fell over and over exaggerated like it hit him hard, and it just looked so funny. Nothing happened about it. Stefan Struve wasn't trying to get him in trouble or anything. It was just the way that Stefan Struve just happened to lay down as the foot just tapped him. It looked like one of those things where it's like if you're in front of your parents and your brother just gently goes to your arm and you go, ah, and start screaming because like you acted like your brother just beat the shit out of you. Yeah, it was like kind of like one of those moments and it made me laugh. But back to Tai Tuivasa. Unfortunately, he couldn't do his patented shoey. There's no beers allowed in the ITAD Center, especially because it's UAE and it's more of a Muslim country. They don't believe in drinking. It's kind of against their religion, which is understandable. I respect that. But I just thought it was funny that one of the Nelk guys was actually in the arena. I don't know how they managed to get in there, but the Nelk dudes were watching the live event, threw a shoe at Tai Tuivasa to get take a shoe out of, and there's Tai Tuivasa looking in the shoe. There's like no beer in the shoe. He's like, "Where's the beer? Where's the beer? Where's the beer?" And the ref's just trying to get him back in the cage. He's just standing there at the end of the cage, like, "Where's the beer? I want the beer. Where's my beer?" It was fucking hilarious, but a great way to end the prelims. A great way to just get into the main card. And I cannot wait to talk about the main card in the next half. I am so excited. This was such a great main card. Even if the names didn't exactly pop out at you on paper, it delivered for what it was being hyped as. My God, I cannot wait the next month when they put this fight or this pay-per-view on Fight Pass. I'm going to watch it over again. Oh, it was just such a great, just a great main card. Even the main event was good, but didn't even compare to any of the main card fights. Those were probably some of the better ones. I loved the main event, but God, I'm just so excited to talk about this whole main card and how it ended up. Anyway, that's it for the prelims. Before I go on to the next half, I just wanted to let you guys know that in the second episode of this week's mini on Wednesday, I recorded about the hashtag End SARS campaign, SARS being a militarized police unit in Nigeria that's been around since the late 90s or mid 90s. They're pretty much above the law. They commit rapes, they kidnap, they kill unlawfully, and they, like I said, they're pretty much above the law. They get away with it. And there's been protests all over Nigeria against these guys. I covered where the protests have been leading, not just from 2017, but recently the second wave has really been taking off again in October. So I've just been covering all the events based on that. And the day that I actually recorded the podcast, the day before Wednesday, some serious shit happened in regards of the protests. Something at the some toll gate in Lagos, which is the capital city of Nigeria and the biggest city in Nigeria. So I talked about that, where Nigerian police forces, Nigerian security forces unlawfully and just indiscriminately shot into a crowd of protesters, killed about 20 people at the time of me recording that, and 50 were injured. It was a pretty serious story, and I wanted to get that out there. If you haven't listened to that podcast yet, I do recommend getting into that podcast and listening to it and educating yourself on what's going over in Nigeria. Next podcast, I did say last podcast I had a funny topic for you guys for that podcast, but the End SARS campaign just kind of took it over, which was good in my part, but I do not have a funny topic next one. I'm going to be talking about just the absolute racism that the Native Americans encounter here in Canada, because a lot of people like to say that Canada is a saving grace for people who are against racism, that we're very diverse and we're very accepting. On the outside, we seem very accepting, but I'm about to blow that facade wide open for you guys in the next Dillo's Dojo mini. But anyway, I will see you guys in the second half. I'm excited to talk about this incredible main card. For the End SARS shit, I really urge you guys to go listen to that podcast. Even if you don't like listening to my voice, just please listen to what I was talking about. Educate yourselves on what's going on in there. Maybe you guys can raise some awareness. There has been nearly not enough awareness being raised for the campaign over in Nigeria. There's been some celebrities, some African-born celebrities or African descent celebrities sharing stuff, but other than that, I have seen nobody else raising awareness for this stuff. So I really urge you to listen to that podcast, and maybe clicking on the End SARS end card on the description of that podcast and just figuring out how you can support the whole campaign and just Share the podcast with everybody that you know. Raise awareness for these people. Nigeria definitely needs the world's help right now, and I want to get everybody on board helping everybody out. So without further ado, I'll be getting into the second half of the podcast now. I will see you guys then. Like I said, I urge you guys to listen to that episode of the Dillo's Dojo Mini. It's very important, not just to me, but just to the world in general. Anyway, I'll see you guys in the second half. I hope you guys enjoy me just fanboying about this entire card. I'll see you guys. All right, let's get into this card now. Oof. What a card. Like I just don't know what to say. First of all, if you just immediately skipped to the second part of this and you didn't listen to the first part, and I said that, I say this all the time on the podcast. If you want to get into MMA and you miss the prelims of most of the events, the fight nights don't really matter if you're a casual, but for the pay-per-views, if you want to get into MMA and you miss the prelims, you're missing out on some absolute fun. And just for this card being what it is, it just really delivered for what it was. It's exactly how it looked on paper. A lot of the no names showed up and it looked incredible. Some guys from the Contender Series that I talked about earlier this year showed up. And it just looked they've all looked incredible in their debuts and there's couple of fights that they've had here. So we're not here to talk about the prelims. Let's just put it at that. We're not here to talk about the prelims. We're here to talk about the big meat and potatoes, the main card. And I just got to say, we've had some pretty decent cards this year despite the pandemic, but this card looked incredible on paper despite some of the names, and it really delivered. Just to start things off, we had the rematch between Magomed Ankalaev and Ion Cutelaba, where they last fought in February. And the story behind this fight, this was just to kick off the main card, by the way. So remember, this fight was just the fight to kick off the main card. So they last fought in February of this year at, I believe, UFC 247. They last fought, I believe, on the prelims of that card. And it was a very short encounter, like around 30 seconds maybe. And it went the way as follows. They just were bouncing back and forth. Ion was trying to, get him up, close the gap between them so he could pressure him. Ankalaev was doing a good job getting out of the way, throwing his kicks. He hit Cutelaba with a left kick, I think, and Cutelaba started to just wobble, and he was wobbling for a bit as he was backing up, but he kind of started to recover. But his strikes, he started to try and throw strikes as he was wobbling, trying to counter, and each strike looked labored. And then the ref stepped in, thinking that Cutelaba was done. But Cutelaba immediately after, didn't even give him a second, started protesting the stoppage, saying he wasn't done. He claimed that he was playing possum, which he could have very well have been, but he did look hurt. Let's be honest. He did look hurt. And Ankalaev is a hard hitter. He's a great striker, very dynamic, great with his kicks, but you just can't discount his power. He's got power and he hits hard. He's put out a lot of people. So, you could say the same for Ion, but to say Ion wasn't hurt was just ridiculous. But anyway, that was the story behind it. Those two were just always chattering back and forth after that fight because Cutelaba claims that had it gone for longer, he would have baited him in with possum and knocked him out. And Ankalaev says he wasn't, Cutelaba wasn't playing possum, which, a lot of us believe. And then this was scheduled, I believe, in the summer as either a co-main event of a fight night or the main card fight of a pay-per-view. And I believe Cutelaba had to pull out due to, I believe, either an injury or maybe a COVID test. Could have been a COVID test. So we had to wait for this. It got rescheduled to this card. And before we got any of the other matchups on this card, I genuinely believe that this was going to be like the featured bout before the co-main event or something. No, I was wrong. This fight kicked off the main card, and it absolutely delivered. And I'm just gonna say right now, just trying to adjust myself there. I'm just gonna say right now that I I thought it was gonna go to a decision, and I was so dead wrong. So these two guys hit hard going into this fight. There's a lot of bad blood between them. Even at the weigh-ins, there was a lot of bad blood between them. They were talking back and forth. Um, so going into this fight, I expected violence. They come out. Ion Kutalaba is coming in with a 15-5 record with one no contest. Magomed Ankalaev is coming in with a 13-1 record, and just looking confident as ever coming into this. But so is Kutalaba. You didn't know what to think coming into this. So they both come out, they're bouncing. Kutalaba's trying to, force them up against the cage. Ankalaev, once again, is doing very good at moving. He's not staying in the center. He's constantly, he's using his footwork to move out of the way. He's constantly moving left and right back in such like not dramatic, but exaggerated ways where he's constantly out of target, but he's always in target of Iwan, so he always has a target on Iwan. He was throwing kicks, throwing his shots. Iwan was hitting him with some nice shots on the counter, but he just started to piece Iwan up with leg kicks and head kicks. And it all just culminated. They both fought extremely hard. Iwan hit Ankalaev with some good shots. Ankalaev hit Kutalaba with some good shots, and it was back and forth the whole round until round near the end. With less than a minute left in the round. I believe they were up against the cage, and Kutalaba tried to hit a counter on Ankalaev, and Ankalaev just, like I said, he was very good with his footwork, constantly moving out of the way, and he did. So he slid out of the way, kind of, still had his target on Iwan, hit a left-right combo, and dropped Iwan, got on top of Iwan, started just raining down hammer fists, because Iwan was hurt, but it looked like he was recovering. And it did look like he was recovering. Kutalaba was covering up very good. And then Ankalaev started to scramble along with Kutalaba, had him in like a full mount position, started landing these hooks from guard. And as at the moment those hooks landed, you could see Kutalaba's head bounce off the canvas, and he was out. It was done. Magomed Ankalaev put a huge asterisk on that, just put a stamp on that little rivalry there, and ended up with the TKO victory. He was going into this as an 11th ranked fighter. He could probably very well stay there, but he's definitely going to be a player in that division now. He showed that he just improves every time he gets into the octagon. He looked calm. He looked poised. Every time it got into a grappling situation, he was very strong. And immediately got it back to striking distance. And then as soon as he started swarming Kutalaba, he just did very good on the ground, keeping him in that position and raining down the shots. So I'm excited to see where Ankalaev goes next, considering that this is part of the Russian/Dagestani invasion of the UFC. And honestly, they've just been looking incredible as of late, So I'm excited to see where he goes in the light heavyweight division. That brings us to our next fight, which is a women's flyweight fight. This division is very shallow for contenders, obviously, but this was a fight that some people were actually pretty excited for. And despite the number 4 ranked Lauren Murphy coming into this 13-4 and as the favorite, and Lilia Shakirova coming into this as I believe her debut, and she was 8-1 coming into this. Shakirova was the underdog, and she was actually slated to beat Lauren Murphy. Everybody thought that Lauren Murphy was going to get upset by Shakirova, and let me just say they were wrong. MMA Twitter was talking about it the entire time the fight was starting, but they were wrong. Lauren Murphy came out, Shakirova was bouncing and, trying to strike fast, but kind of just throwing everything she had in each strike almost. And Lauren Murphy was doing a good job at just keeping her head off the center line and just kind of keeping it at a distance, getting out of the way of those shots, landing her own counter shots. She was hitting Shakirova pretty hard and just forcing her into some uncomfortable positions. She did a very good job. She got hit as well. I'm not saying that Lauren Murphy was like fucking Neo in the Matrix, but obviously she did a very good job staying out of the range of Shakirova's striking. She got hit a couple times, but it was mostly Lauren Murphy's round where she just she played a very smart game and looked very experienced and just kind of walked Shakarova down. Ended up on the ground for a moment near the end of the round. Everybody was saying how Shakarova is incredible off her back, but in those small moments where Lauren Murphy was on her back and the end of the first round, it looked as if Lauren Murphy was the dominant one. So when the bell rang, we thought it was just going to be on the feet again. But Lauren Murphy's coach was calling for takedowns. So it ended up exactly how we thought it was going to. It started up on the feet again. Shakarova trying to, throw everything that she's got in the punches, but be quick about it. Lauren Murphy just staying calm, staying out of the range for the most part, landing her counter shots. And then she just starts walking Shakarova down against the cage and goes for a takedown. They end up on the ground. It was like a trip takedown against the cage. And that's yet again everybody talking about Shakarova. She's gonna submit Lauren Murphy because she's very strong off her back. Well, Lauren Murphy started hitting her with some shots, and as Shakarova started to scramble, Lauren Murphy was doing a good job just countering her scrambles. And at one point, as Shakarova tried to scramble to get up, Lauren Murphy did a very good job at scrambling with her and took her back like so quick. Wrapped her arm around Shakarova's neck, got the rear naked choke position in so quick. As soon as you saw them start leaning back, it was over. Shakarova fought the hands, but it was too late by the time she started fighting the hands. The arm was already squeezing on the carotid artery. She was already deep into that submission. It was over. And Lauren Murphy ended up submitting Shakarova via rear naked choke near the middle of round 2, and it was such a nice submission. I think she might get submission of the night, maybe if not some of the others on the prelims do, or anybody on the main card that's next. But this card so far was delivering. I think it's just easy to say that this card was delivering finish after finish. That brings us into our next fight, which was a middleweight bout between undefeated Jacob Malkoun from, I believe, Australia. He was coming into this bout 4-0. And Phil Haas, who I talked about on the podcast a couple months ago, probably a month ago. I talked about him when he was on Dana White's Contender Series. He got a brutal knockout. He was coming into this bout 8-2. Now, some people thought that Jacob Malkoun was going to win this, but Phil Haas was the favorite. But Jacob Malkoun was the undefeated fighter, and he looked very incredible in all of his outings. But man, even if we thought that Phil Haas was going to win, we did not expect it to go the way it did. The fight was starting out slow. They're both feeling each other out. Phil Haas is just kind of walking Malkoun down without striking, just kind of, testing the distance. Malkoun trying to throw strikes, but Phil Haas just kind of getting out of the way of them. And then Phil Haas just throws his first punch and hurts Jacob Malkoun. He's against the cage. He's backing up. Phil Haas is trying to strike. He's mostly hitting arm, but then he hits clean again and again and again, like 3 strikes in a row, and just drops Jacob Malkoun with this nice, 2-piece, 3-piece combo, and just drops him flat on his back. And he was out when he hit the ground, but Haas hit maybe 1 or 2 follow-up shots because the ref didn't step in by then. But it was only 18 seconds. It took Phil Haas to make his actual UFC debut in 18 seconds. That is the dream come true for a UFC debut. You go in against a very credible opponent. You're on the main card of a pay-per-view, and you finish your opponent in 18 seconds via a highlight-worthy knockout. It was awesome. It was incredible to watch. But I was a little worried about this card because it was yes, this was going on at 2 p.m. during the day for me. But I was worried because this card was going way too fast. And it was. It was already into its featured bout, the heavyweight bout between Alexander Volkov and Walt Harris, who was returning for the first time after his loss against fucking Alistair Overeem. Thinking of Volkov, the guy he's fighting. He was up against Alistair Overeem, almost finished him in the first round. It was his first fight back since, his whole daughter thing. If you guys don't know the story behind that, I'll just get into it really quick. last year around October, in the end of October, maybe like November, around there. His stepdaughter Anaya Blanchard went missing, and it wasn't a big search at first, but Walt Harris went to social media. All the MMA fans just lapped it up and started sharing it, which was amazing. And then Dana White stepped in, put like $100,000 of his money into the search. Eventually, the search ended. They found her. Unfortunately, she was dead. Like, they found her body. I think weeks later. So Walt Harris was just, he was going to fight, but after that whole spiel, he had to pull out, which is understandable. So he came back against Overeem. It was marketed so heavily, and I feel like, yeah, you have to kind of do it with the marketing and pull like the heartstrings, but like I felt sick watching all the previews up to the fight because it was just all about him and his daughter and just talking about the story over and over again, to the point where it felt like they were really just milking it. But it was his first fight back after that, and he looked incredible in the first round. He nearly finished Alistair Overeem in the very first round, but Alistair Overeem got saved by the bell, and in the process, Walt Harris kind of gassed himself out trying to finish Overeem. Overeem recovered during between rounds, and Harris didn't quite recover his stamina between rounds, and Overeem ended up knocking out Walt Harris. So going into this, Walt Harris needs a win. But Alexander Volkov also lost his last fight out. He was facing Curtis Blades. That's not too much of a story of itself. Curtis Blades absolutely ground him to a decision, I believe, and just put his work on him and knocked him back in the rankings. So this was a 7th ranked heavyweight in Alexander Volkov against a 10th ranked heavyweight in Walt Harris. Alexander Volkov was going into this 31-8, and Walt Harris was going into this 13-8. It was a great fight from start to finish. There was some ground game, but it was mostly on the feet. And I just got to say, even though, Volkov just came off that very discouraging grinding out loss against Curtis Blades, Walt Harris is somewhat of a similar fighter, especially recently. He'd been talking about how he'd been training his wrestling and stuff, his defensive wrestling and everything. So, I was expecting Volkov to be a little gun shy and be prepared for that. Well, Volkov looked great from start to finish in this entire fight. He came out, used his distance very good. He had like a 2-inch height advantage on him. I believe like a 3-inch reach, maybe 2-inch reach advantage. He used that to his advantage. He's a great kickboxer too, very dynamic with his kicks. Not to like a spinning kick level or anything, but he throws a mean front kick. He's got, I believe, one of the only 6 front kick knockouts in the UFC, in all of UFC history. And he's just very deadly with that front kick. And he was throwing that, and it was landing every now and then. But for the most part, he was using his reach, his hand reach, and just doing a very good job at doing that, counterboxing as Walt Harris tried to come in. He didn't allow Walt Harris to fully come in and close the pocket. He would always hit the counter shot and push Walt Harris back, and actually had him stumble back a couple times and almost finished him. It was a fun fight, to say the least, because Walt Harris had his moments too. He figured it out halfway through the round. He would start to move dynamically and close the pocket that way, and he'd hit Volkov with some nice shots, start using his wrestling a bit more that he was learning. But Volkov, for the most part, it was his fight. He was doing a very good job at just utilizing his reach. So going into the second round, Walt Harris needed to kind of change up the game, and that's when Walt Harris started to use his clinch more. He started to really rush to close the pocket, and Volkov continued to hit him with some counter shots. So they got back to the middle, and I want to say like within a minute into the first round, Volkov hits Walt Harris with this very vicious and quick front kick, but not to the face. It was lower. And at first, everyone, including the commentators, including myself, thought it was a cup shot. It was not a cup shot. It was not a cup shot at all. It ended up being a solar plexus shot. It was the the place in between, it's on your abdomen, below, kind of below or in between the bottom of your ribs. That right there, like that below area, it's not your ribs, but it's kind of just below it, in between. He hit directly in there, and you could see it either, I think, with the ball of the foot or his toes. I couldn't really see that much, but he dug his foot deep into it with that kick. You could hear it after they replayed the clip. You could hear it with the mic being closer to the fighters. You hear Walt Harris get hit, and he's like, "Ah!" Like it hurt him. It took the wind out of him. He starts backing up, and Volkov just starts swarming in. Does not let Walt Harris recover, and ends up getting the TKO victory. So this card was looking to be just finish after finish after finish after finish. And the next fight, the co-main event, was looking to be that too, because we had Robert Whittaker, who's a man who just goes to war absolutely, against Jared Cannonier, who's a man who's fought in 3 weight divisions. He originally started his career in heavyweight, had some pretty decent knockouts in heavyweight, but also got knocked out and stuff. And then he went to light heavyweight, had a pretty decent run at light heavyweight, but wanted to try middleweight for a change. And he is 3-0 at middleweight against some of the top guys, including Anderson Silva himself. And he was coming into this looking slightly the underdog, but to the MMA Twitter people, like the favorite, due to those credentials, due to him being a 3-weight fighter. Robert Whittaker came in looking incredibly improved, though. My God, I thought he looked great in the Till fight. I think he looked incredible in this fight. It was just a 3-round fight. It was his first 3-round fight since, I want to say, 2017. And he looked incredible. He looked very comfortable. Cannonier hit him with some good shots, kept hitting him with these leg kicks that were really reddening up Robert Whittaker's legs. But Robert Whittaker just did not let that stop him. He just kept bouncing around, constantly moving out of the way, throwing like 3-4 shots to Cannonier's like 1 or 2, and just was hitting Cannonier mostly in the head and the body with some nice shots, and started to bust up Cannonier. And despite Cannonier hitting him with the leg kicks, and the leg kicks like clearly hurting Whittaker, Whittaker was still bouncing around, using his footwork and his strikes to just walk Cannonier down and take control of the octagon, and that was the whole story of the fight. Second round, he's coming in doing the same thing. Cannonier's hitting him with some nice shots, some brutal leg kicks, and Whittaker decides to change it up. He was a wrestler, and he hasn't used his wrestling that much in a very long time. He comes in with this nice double leg, starts pushing it towards the cage, gets Cannonier to the ground, but Cannonier gets back up to his feet, which was incredible. But nonetheless, the way that Rob was fighting in that second round, it ended up being his round, because he once he got to the feet, he continued his game plan. He was bouncing around, just eating those leg kicks for the most part, but checking a few of them, and just every time Cannonier would counter with like 1 or 2 shots, Rob would come back with 3 or 4. He would come back with a nice combo that would hit him hard in the head and the body in a mix, and it just looked really good. Robert Whittaker looked incredible. So in the third round, Jared Cannonier clearly needed a finish, and Robert Whittaker wasn't about that life. Robert Whittaker comes out, same game plan, starts hitting Cannonier with some nice counter shots, and then he was hitting this combo the whole night, but it was just hitting forearm, where he hits a left, and as he's hitting the left, and he makes the person kind of dive to his right or duck to his right to get out of the way, he just so fluently, like just a fucking flowing river, just goes into this nice right heavy roundhouse kick, and he finally hit Cannonier with it and stunned Cannonier and pushed Cannonier against the cage, started hitting him with some nice shots, knocked him to the ground, got on top of him and started loading down shots, but Cannonier survived. That was the big thing. So they get back up to their feet after a while. Cannonier looks a little kind of recovered after he was hurt. Rob's looking tired. Both guys start to look tired after a while because Cannonier's starting to throw some heavy shots. It's coming to the end of the round now. Robert Whittaker hits another takedown. Doesn't last long. The seconds are counting down, and all of a sudden, as they both come into the center to strike, Cannonier hits him with a right hook, hits Whittaker with a right hook, and stuns him, kind of stops him in his place. And Robert Whittaker kind of stumbles back, but catches himself. And then just manages to survive. Cannonier just wins the round. Well, I don't know. To me, I think Cannonier didn't win that round, but to the judges, Cannonier wins that round. So we go to the judges' scorecard. It's the first decision on the main card, and it ended up being the best fight on the main card so far. Ended up being Robert Whittaker's fight, 29-28. And we're probably going to end up seeing him against Izzy in the future. I feel like that might end up being the same story. But he's going to look better against Izzy, but that's besides the point. I think it's going to be the main story. Robert Whittaker is going to lose again, but we're going to get to the main event now because I'm running out of time. Khabib Nurmagomedov coming in to make his 29th fight appearance and his 13th UFC appearance. He's going against Justin Gaethje, who is considered the hardest threat ever in the lightweight division, despite his past losses. He is a hard striker, very unpredictable. His defensive grappling is unique and very hard to keep him down. So everybody thought Khabib was going to have a problem with that going into the fight. So this is his first fight, by the way, without his dad. I've talked about this on the podcast before. His father, Abdulmanap Nurmagomedov, passed away due to complications due to the COVID virus. So this is his first fight without him. He comes in. Everybody thinks Justin might actually get this. So they come out into the first round, and I thought Justin was going to get this. They come out. Justin starts to strike and hits Khabib, like once, but misses. Khabib comes out aggressive, and his boxing looks pretty damn good. He's looking like a rounded out fighter. He's outstriking Justin for the most part at the beginning, hitting him with this fucking jumping jab where he leads in, like he hops in the back in and out jab, and he hits it lightning fast, hits it hard. It's clearly throwing Justin off and everything. He's doing really, really good. But Justin's hitting these leg kicks every time or every now and then when he can. So Khabib's just getting cocky with his feet, starts hitting Justin some more until near the end of the round. Justin hits him with a nice 1-2 that you could hear the punches, and it clearly looked like it stunned Khabib. So Khabib just started to kind of push Gaethje against the cage near the end of the round and got into the cage, but didn't really do too much with it because there wasn't really too much time left. Second round comes, same thing happens again. Khabib's getting cocky on the feet and he's standing with Justin. Justin hits him with a leg kick that actually hurts him, wobbles his leg, and it looked like a weird plant for Khabib when he went back to step back on it. So Khabib has to change his game plan. The moment he felt that, he goes in for the double leg, takes Justin down. And I thought that Justin was going to do very good with his defensive grappling, but within matter of minutes, he has Justin in an armbar and then quickly switches to a triangle choke, and Justin tries to slam him, which just deepens the triangle choke more. And within 1 minute and 34 seconds into the second round, Justin is tapping. Very clearly in front of Jason Herzog, tapping like 4, 5, 6, 7 times in front of Jason Herzog. And then he goes out and finally Jason Herzog gets Khabib off of him. So fuck you, Jason Herzog. What the fuck was that? That was the dumbest fucking thing I've ever seen done by a ref, and I've seen some stupid shit, but I'm not here to bitch about that. Khabib, 29-0. 29-0. The big thing about this, though, is after the fight, he starts talking about how this is his first fight without his father, and he doesn't know if he can continue because he's never had a fight with his father, and it doesn't feel the same. And he wants his legacy. All he's ever wanted is to be considered number one pound for pound MMA fighter. And I think he solidified that easily tonight. Or not tonight. Last night. I'm really confused with the fucking times. He solidified that. And so he starts taking his tape off. Well, fuck. Khabib just retired. So, and I feel like it's official. He left his gloves in the octagon and everything. He meant it. So with Khabib vacating the title, we have in January, Dustin versus Conor at 170. They may change that to 155. and make it a title eliminator. Or winner of that fight goes up against Justin Gaethje for the vacant title. Or those two fight and Gaethje versus Ferguson 2 happens. And winner of those two fights go up against the vacant belt. So personally, I think that Dana is going to try to target Conor and Dustin as the lightweight title. Now, I don't think I'm crazy for thinking that either, because he's done it before, considering what he did with Khabib. Obviously, the fight with Khabib that Conor had, there was a story behind it, and he used that. But I think that this time he's just going to try to snake Conor into it. I think that they're going to make Dustin versus Conor a 155 fight. They're going to change that to 155, and they're going to make it a lightweight title fight. I think that's what's going to happen. But anyway, nonetheless, Khabib retired. He retires 29-0 unless he comes back for that GSP fight. I think if he ever gets offered that GSP fight, he very well might as well come back for that one. That's a big money fight, big legacy fight, and then it will rack up his record to 30-0 if he wins. If not, there's really nothing to lose. He lost to George St. Pierre, the greatest of all time, to do it, right? But yeah, Khabib retired, and I think that's it for everything. So anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed the card as much as I did. Anyone who missed the card or missed the prelims, you missed out on a bundle of fun. The card was incredible. But anyway, until next weekend, until the next fight card, which is Anderson Silva returning against Uriah Hall, I will see you guys later. Peace out, guys.
You've been listening to the Dillo's Dojo podcast. Keep in touch with Dillo on his social media at Dillo Ross on Twitter and Dillo Ross on Instagram.